If you're a fan of old school bodybuilding, then make sure to check out Sups the Movie. Filmmaker Alex Ardenti explores the $40 billion sports supplement industry, delving into the origins, evolution, and current state of supplements used by millions of fitness enthusiasts worldwide, available at Amazon and Vimeo. Hi everybody, Golden Era Bookworm here, and today we continue with the series of interviews with Jerry Brainum, and in this video, Jerry addresses the real reason as to why Frank Zane was called the Chemist. Little known to most, Jerry Brainum lived next door to Frank Zane, and Jerry details what he learned from Frank Zane and the pre-contest protocol that Frank would go through to get shredded. In this detailed interview, Jerry also details the different thyroid drugs and complexes that Arnold and the rest of the Gold's Gym crew would take pre-contest. Enjoy.
Speaking of chemistry, this never asked Frank Zane himself. I've interviewed him twice. I'm going to interview him again in a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
He doesn't like talking about it too much, but maybe I'll ask you. Do you know why Frank Zane was called the Chemist?
His explanation, Frank himself, he wrote this on his Instagram page just a couple of days ago.
Yeah, I know.
His explanation is because he took so many supplements. Frank was pretty progressive, I say so myself, as far as he was taking a lot of amino acids. As a matter of fact, Frank Zane and I once lived right next door to each other in Santa Monica, an apartment building, 230 Bay Street. He was in apartment 11. I was in 12. We lived literally right next to each other. And I remember once, this will also get into why he's called the Chemist. He used to like to take, back then a popular supplement was desiccated liver tablets.
Yeah, of course.
You know, Frank used to get him in boxes of 10,000 tablets at a time. So I would actually buy, I was taking 50 tablets a day myself, and Frank would take 50, sometimes 100, whatever. Yeah. So I sometimes get some desiccated liver tablets from him because he got by, big. He didn't mind selling me a little, But I remember one time I was training for a contest, and Frank, I said to Frank, I don't know what's going on. I'm dieting and just the fat loss stopped. What I didn't know at the time was I had hit that plateau. My calories were so low that my metabolism slowed down. So Frank, he says, hold on a second. He goes in the back. He hands me a white envelope with a couple of tablets in there. He says, and he told me how to take it. He said, you take one for the first 3 days and two, and blah, blah, and then taper off after 2 weeks. He gave me enough for about 2 weeks, I remember. I said, Frank, what is this? He said, it's Armour Thyroid, right? Now, Armour Thyroid there's probably, I call it the safest thyroid you could take because it's extracted from pigs, and it actually, whereas Cytomel is only T3, the other one is called levothyroxine, Synthroid. That's T4. That's the most common thyroid administered, prescribed by doctors. If somebody comes to a doctor, they show low thyroid, they're going to give him Synthroid, not Cytomel, because Cytomel is the most active thyroid. It's 5 times more active than Synthroid, and unfortunately, doctors feel that it hits the heart too hard. It's too hard on the heart. They don't like to give out Cytomel. Bodybuilders like it because it's the thyroid hormone. See,
yeah.
Now, Armour Thyroid was a natural mixture of both T4 and T3. See, and it had and thyroglobulin. It had the whole thyroid complex in there. And the strange thing was that if you used it right, there was no side effects, no muscle loss, but it gave you thyroid activity. So he gave me that. But to answer your question directly, the real reason he was called the Chemist, and he won't admit this, but I'm telling you, was because Frank had this weird thing where 3 weeks before a contest, he wouldn't look like he's ready yet. He'd look a little smooth, not ready. He'd actually look small and smooth. But then as the contest approaches, maybe he'd kind of go into hiding. He used to like to go into hiding. And then he'd show up at the contest looking ripped. This is a space of maybe 2 weeks, right? So the idea was Frank was using an array of drugs that was so specific for him that they were literally able to transform his body in 2 weeks. That, plus the heavy supplement use, that's what earned him the name Chemist.
Yeah, I mean, I've read much of his material. I've interviewed him. He told me that before a contest, he would be having up to 700 tablets a day.
That's yeah.
100 of liver tablets, 100 aminos,
Very true.
enzyme, the works, everything.
And
But
it's all, yeah.
I've read Muscle Smoke and Mirrors, where Don Howarth talks about Cytomel and use in Gold's Gym, Frank using it, Arnold, etc.
Right.
So I'm guessing, plus the information that Frank admittedly wrote in his diary. Frank trains secret training diaries. I think the training diaries. He actually writes the Gold's Gym protocol in a poem.
Oh.
He writes, about Primobolan and 15 mgs of Dianabol was the standard.
That's true.
Did Frank ever tell you, or did you ever witness Frank taking Primobolan and Dianabol as well?
Never did. I never did. But there was a rumor for years, and I don't know whether it's true, but there was a rumor for years that Frank took so much thyroid that because what happens is if you take enough thyroid, as I said earlier, you probably know this, your thyroid basically output, your natural thyroid stops. Mm-hmm. And if it happens long enough, you literally, your thyroid actually shrivels up, where you get to the point where you have to take thyroid the rest of your life. That was the rumor about Frank, that he had taken so much thyroid that his own thyroid gland had shriveled up and he had to be on thyroid all the time. That was a rumor. I want to make it clear. I cannot confirm that. This is what a lot of people told me that about Frank, but I never heard Frank say that, and I have no evidence it's true. But that's what they said about him. So, but I can confirm. I can confirm that all the bodybuilders in that era, before contest, they did all use Cytomel T3. Okay. That was the drug of choice.
Wow. Okay. Question: would you like to continue, or are you?
Yeah, it's all right. Yeah.
Okay.
On Sunday, I'm normally sleeping at this time, so it's okay.
All right. Yeah. Just want to say I'm really appreciating this. This is awesome so far.
No problem. I like to talk about this stuff. I'm kind of into the history of bodybuilding.
Excellent.
I mean, I always talk about names that only somebody who really is into bodybuilding history would know. For example, a couple of weeks ago, I mentioned a guy named Bob Hines. Okay. He was competed in the late 50s, around 56 or so. But this guy, if you could look him up on Google, Bob Hines bodybuilder, I'll show you a picture of him. This guy was extremely vascular, way ahead. Nobody had veins back then. Nobody. No bodybuilder showed extensive vascularity. This guy looked like a highway map. He had veins all over his legs and his arms. He was kind of a blocky physique. He had very deep abdominals. He's one of those examples of a guy with very deep abdominals but a thick waist. He had a heavy oblique development. He had a classic body, but it wasn't aesthetic. So he didn't do that well in shows, even though he had that muscularity. And after about I think he competed in Mr. America about 3 times, didn't do well, and just quit. I mean, he just stopped bodybuilding. He never competed again. But this is the reason I mentioned him. He's a name that only somebody really into bodybuilding history would know. He was one of those kind of guys that really didn't become that famous.
Okay. I can't say I've heard much of him. I know a lot of the bodybuilders from the 40s and 50s.
Yeah.
I should say very early 50s, from the mid 50s to mid 60s. I haven't read much about. Of course, from the mid 60s onwards, I know a lot about those. So.
Sure.
But I'm sure I'm going to come across him pretty soon. Before I forget, just one quick question on what you mentioned about Arnold earlier. I asked you about all of his steroid protocol. You also mentioned that he took thyroids. What kind did Arnold take?
Cytomel.
Cytomel,
yeah, which was a T3 drug.
Okay.
Honestly, that was something I heard. I never saw Arnold. I saw Arnold take Primobolan, but I never saw him take thyroid. But that was the rumor. It's probably true because just about all the so-called golden age bodybuilders at that time, the original Gold's Gym, before a show, most of them would take a thyroid for, they had this idea that it helped them burn fat, which is not really true, as it is, because the way thyroid hormone works, is the only way it's going to help increase metabolism and oxidize fat is if you have to take more than the body makes. Because if you take less than the body makes, it just works as an inhibition to your natural thyroid hormone. So if you take, let's say your thyroid makes 3 grains of thyroid a day, natural hormone. If you take 1 grain of a thyroid drug, now the brain senses it, and it reduces the thyroid output to 2 grains.
Yeah.
So you still have 3 grains. So you really
negative feedback loop.
Negative feedback, exactly. That's exactly right. And that works with testosterone and the other hormones.
Yeah.
But so to get an effect, you'd have to take, let's say 4 grains, at least 4 grains, more than the body makes. Unfortunately, the guys all were familiar with the fact that too much thyroid can cause a catabolic effect in muscles. So what they did is they took fairly modest amounts.
Yeah. Okay.
And they were actually, it was a form, I didn't know this back then, but it was actually a form of self-deception. They thought the thyroid was making them cut. It was not. It was their diet and their training. The thyroid was doing nothing because they didn't do enough.
That's incredible.
Wait, I have to amend that statement. Wait a minute, I have to amend that. There comes a point when you diet, when you're dieting strictly, for example, restricting calories, you do encounter a dieting plateau, as it's known. And when that happens, the reason that you stop losing weight is because your body senses especially if it's rapid, your body senses the rapid loss of weight. To protect the vital tissues such as lean mass, muscles, and organs, it takes your natural thyroid, active thyroid hormone, which is T3, and it converts it into something called reverse T3. When that happens, your metabolism drops down to almost nothing. So, the antidote is thyroid hormone. So I have to amend that statement. Knowing that these guys dieted, let's say at a certain point in their dieting, their fat loss would slow down because the metabolism has been slowed because of the reverse T3 effect. So if they took something like Cytomel, it would actually get the thyroid so that they would burn fat. So I have to amend.
It might push that threshold that
Exactly.
they encounter. Okay, that's really interesting. That's really, really interesting.
Yeah.
I ask these questions because as a biochemist, I'm really interested. So.
Oh, I didn't know you were a biochemist. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's good to know because you obviously know what I'm talking about when I talk about. Yeah.
Wow, I mean, that was so much information to take in from Jerry. As we have heard, Cytomel, a T3 thyroid drug, was experimented with by Golden Era bodybuilders and taken by Arnold and the rest of the Goldstream crew pre-contest to get shredded. But it unfortunately had catabolic effects, leading to both muscle and fat loss. Jerry explained that once dieting had stopped making an effect, Cytomel was used to push the body's catabolic threshold to present a more ripped physique on stage. More interesting was Jerry's testimonial about why Frank Zane was called the Chemist, stating that 2 weeks prior to contest, Frank Zane would go into hiding, so to speak, and come out later looking ripped to shreds and muscular. This 2-week methodical transformation, which presumably was done with the aid of steroids and other performance-enhancing drugs, along with the extreme 700 tablet a day supplement regimen, was the true reason why Frank Zane was called the Chemist. Now, before you all go and call Frank Zane a liar, I have this to say in his defense. In my interviews with Frank Zane, Frank stated that he was called the Chemist because he took a lot of supplements, up to 700 tablets a day. And although I did ask him about his steroid protocol, he refused to go into detail and instead mentioned that he did not depend on them.
If I would have relied on steroids, I would have been quite a bit bigger and bulkier. But I realized that wasn't the way to go for me. And so I experimented to find out just what would happen. I didn't like it because not only do you pack on muscle fast and it sort of comes on indiscriminately, it doesn't really go where you want it to. It tends to gravitate to the big areas. And the other thing is it makes you more aggressive. And, there's this thing called roid rage. You just get more aggressive. And I just didn't like it. And I decided not to rely on steroids, and I didn't.
Now, other YouTube channels have accused Frank Zane of claiming a natty status, but in defense of Frank Zane, he never stated that. He never stated that at all. He never stated that he was a natural either, and I think his words are being taken out of context. Frank said he never depended on them, which probably means that he did take steroids and other performance-enhancing drugs to enhance his physique, but he only did this as a final touch. The majority of the time that he spent on his physique, it was built naturally and without drugs. And therefore, Frank is correct in his statement of stating that he did not depend on steroids, unlike others that did. It is also well known that in his training diaries, he does state the protocol that was used in Gold's Gym, being 100 milligrams of primobolan and 15 milligrams a day of oral dianabol, personally stating the following, quote, "Not worried about getting fat. You cannot, not on that in those days," end quote, as if talking from personal experience. Was this Frank Zane's steroid protocol? It is likely, but we will never really know. I can also understand why Frank would state that he did not depend on steroids, because like many golden era bodybuilders, he doesn't want to necessarily promote their use, which is very noble of him. In the past, Frank has also stated that he is against steroid use by young teenagers especially and novice bodybuilders, and instead advocating natural bodybuilding because of the dangerous side effects of steroids on the body.
Another thing too is teenagers should absolutely stay away from that stuff because they already have enough testosterone to build muscle.
I'm really against the use of anabolic steroids for young bodybuilders and also for women. I'm not against the use of certain nutrients, let's say, like vitamins, minerals, enzymes, amino acids, and even hormones if they're called for in certain cases, like with advancing years. One thing I've done a great deal of study in is hormonal replacement therapy. As people get older, their hormones secretions slow down, and that's one of the reasons why people age, as well as eating the wrong foods. Now, things like that I'm not against, but I am against the way a lot of younger athletes are using anabolic steroids when there is really no call for it. They have enough natural hormones in their body to develop their body without having to resort to that.
But they want to grow faster than possibly without.
It's dangerous. It can be dangerous. It's best to let nature take its own course.
Again, Frank Zane is right. All we have to do is look at the list of bodybuilders that have died all too young recently due to steroids to realize Frank Zane's message. Jerry also stated that Frank would take Armour thyroid, which in Jerry's opinion was the safest thyroid, as it was composed of a mixturable complex of all thyroid hormones being T3 and T4, and was an extract and natural animal thyroid with no negative side effects. That is, no muscle loss and targeted fat loss specifically, unlike Cytomel, which had a catabolic effect overall on both muscle and fat. So we can see why Frank Zane was called the Chemist by everyone at Gold's Gym, due to his intelligent and methodical pre-contest approach. So I do hope you have enjoyed this interview with Jerry Brainum on the shredding protocols and secrets of the golden era bodybuilders, and in particular, the true reason as to why Frank Zane was called the Chemist. If you have enjoyed this video, please give the video a like, subscribe if you haven't done so yet, and please leave your comments and click the bell button to be notified of future videos. Make sure to subscribe to the Applied Metabolics newsletter by Jerry Brainum if you do wish to enhance your knowledge on bodybuilding nutrition, especially as a natural bodybuilder. More information is given in the description below. That's it from me. This is the Golden Era Bookworm saying bye for now. Now, if you're interested in learning more about Vince Gironda's approach to bodybuilding, his principles, and all these tips of wisdom that he has, I mean, there's so much stuff that probably hasn't been proven by science, and it will take science to prove or disprove Vince. But to be honest, these 3 books, I believe, which I call the Classic Physique Bundle, are the best books that Vince ever came out with. And they, of course, are the Wild Physique, the Master Series, and the Pro Series. Have a look at it this way. The Wild Physique, I believe, is like the ABCs of Vince Gironda's principles to bodybuilding. He teaches you the exercises and his principles. But how do you put them together? Well, the Master Series is a 14-month program of using all of these principles, all of the diets that Vince came out with, all of the exercises. And believe me, it's a brilliant, brilliant program. Many people have used it. I know personally a lot of bodybuilders that have actually used it and made fantastic results with it. And of course, the Pro Series was a book that he came out with later on, specially targeted for getting into competition. It's just these three books, as I call it, the Classic Physique Bundle, Vince's best work, and available, of course, at www.goldenerabookworm.com. Now, the Pro Series of Bodybuilding, which was targeted for professional bodybuilders, contains 6 programs, each of which go for 2 months each. So it's a whole year, again, in preparation for competition. Online training is now available, including my new program, Novice to Classic, a program geared towards beginners and novices looking at developing a classic physique, as well as Classic Cut, geared at those who wish to lose weight and gain muscle fast. Details available at www.goldenerabookworm.com. Need a bodybuilding poster for your gym or office? Then check out Iron Man Magazine archive.smugmug.com for the highest quality posters on the planet. Scroll through the galleries of all the legends, including greats such as Arnold, Frank Zane, Sergio Oliva, Serge Nubret, Tom Platz, and Larry Scott, and much, much more, and select your poster now. Your favorite YouTube channel, please visit teespring.com/store/goldenerabookworm for merchandise, including t-shirts, hoodies, face masks, phone cases, and much, much more. Once again, at teespring.com/store/goldenerabookworm. Become a patron at www.patreon.com/goldenerabookworm for hard to find books, scans of rare photos, and articles on the golden era of bodybuilding. To take full advantage of my collaborations, use code GEB20 with nspnutrition.com and vincegironda.com, as well as code bookworm12 at osl.com for a discount at checkout.
I don't think that Bill Phillips looked at it as, I want to compete against them. I want to destroy them.
If they pass legislation basically making any type of food supplement a prescription item, that would be the end, the death of the entire food supplement industry.
Take your vitamin pill now.
In the 1960s, the sports supplement industry was barely emerging.
I think the reason why Joe Weider was so successful was he had Arnold on his side.
He wasn't selling supplements. He was in the dream business.
Joe Weider was a marketing genius.
People would say the promotions or the endorsements back then were cheesy. To me, it wasn't. I loved it.
Fitness was taking off. You know, fitness became cool. You had a lot of readers that wanted to be like the stars that they idolized.
Bill's strength is his marketing savvy. He's a marketing genius.
Got it. It's only vitamin.
The right of American citizens to have free access to dietary supplements of their choice.
Consult your physician. You might as well consult the next guy you meet on the street. They don't know a damn thing about vitamins and nutrition.
The dietary supplement industry became the #2 most regulated industry. Nuclear, dietary supplements, pharmaceutical. We're more regulated than drugs.
They come in and you need to allow the FDA. They have jurisdiction.
The enforcement is kind of the questionable side of it, and how do they really get a handle on this monster?
A lot of people tell me that the dietary supplement industry is completely unregulated. It's the wild, wild west out there. It's a free-for-all. That could not be further from the truth.
A dietary supplement is not allowed to have a side effect. I always say that pharmaceutical has to have a minimum of 100 side effects in order for it to be a drug.
And now, it's a $40 billion industry and growing.
That's the really interesting thing, is the cast of characters from the 80s, when it was kind of iffy, to now when it's a lot more legitimate.
They made it sound cutting edge, revolutionary, and different, and I want that. That's cool.
We are in this industry to improve our health. It's not just a vanity project here. We're working on our lifeline. We eat a certain way to improve our health. We train a certain way to improve our health. Supplements are just that. They supplement your work, your graft, your nutrition.
They demonize dietary supplements, but they say all you need is real food. Well, what's a real food?
They pump you up and get you hard, stronger.
faster, bigger.
Doc, I want to take this weight gain. I want to take this pre-workout. Doctor's, no way. That stuff, we don't know what's in that. It could be, no way. I'm not going to give you, it's going to kill the industry, bottom line.
So I must have drank so much protein powder from age 15 to 18 that my head was going to explode.
I believed in metrics so much that I would probably punch somebody in the face if they tried to take it away from me.